Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. If you can do me a favor and like and share the video and try and watch the video to the end, it really helps the algorithm. So in today's topic, I'm going to be talking about three subjects. Number one, there's a Spanish article that was released yesterday, and in it it said, "Did Europe wake up too late?" And it's obviously talking about America and its dependence on America. The other topic I wanted to talk about is looks like ASML is suffering because there's some restrictions with Chinese rare earths, and they are not going into ASML on time. And ASML has started to cry about it. So let's discuss that. And I'm also going to be talking about Canada and especially Mark Carney, who seems to be basically going back on his word about having trade links with China. And people are asking, did China buy 650,000 tons of rapeseed for nothing? Because Mark Carney promised, he would do trade deals with China. And because of Trump, he's basically backing down. So I'm going to be talking about that. So in first discussion, I'm going to be talking about Europe, and especially in this Spanish article, did Europe wake up too late? First of all, Europe has never woken up, and it never will. First of all, von der Leyen is still in power, and you have all the European bureaucrats and diplomats and leaders. They are still kissing Trump's backside, unfortunately. They are still kissing American backside. They are kissing NATO's backside, Israeli backside, you name it, guys. Unless there's a big change in leadership, nothing's going to change in Europe. Europe should have learnt its lesson 4 years ago in Trump's first term. And in Trump's first term, he was also doing the same sort of stuff. He was putting tariffs and sanctions on European companies. He was being extremely hard on Europe. He was talking about Europe increasing its funding to NATO. He was extremely kind of almost like there's a picture of Merkel and him almost clashing. She was right on his face. He was sitting down and she was literally on his face. And even Sarkozy had a few running dealings with Trump as well. So, in the first term, the Europeans should have taken a lot of lessons from Trump's first term. Then Biden came in, and obviously they started a war with Russia. And von der Leyen famously was saying in a press conference that, Russians were basically taking chips from washing machines. And von der Leyen was saying that we are happy to basically buy all the gas that we need from our friends. And she was obviously talking to Biden. Biden was standing right behind her, smirking. And she was saying, we will do trade with our friends and we will buy all the gas we need from our friends. But the small print is she forgot to mention that the gas from United States is 10 times more expensive compared to Russian gas. And also she forgot to mention that Europe is becoming more and more dependent on United States for United States to bully Europe. Because not only did they lose the cheap Russian gas, Europeans had to buy American gas and oil using dollars. Because what happened previously, Europeans were buying gas and oil from Russia and from other countries as well in euros, because they were settling in euros. Sometimes they would settle in other currencies, but mostly would settle in euros, and that was the deal. Now they are forced to buy American gas and oil in dollars, which means the euro has been going down and the American dollar has been popping up. Obviously, the dollar has been going down as well recently, but that is because of other reasons, mainly because countries are dumping dollars and bonds and things like that, and the economy is not doing well in the United States. But the European euro is not doing well either. So the Europeans have pretty much shot themselves in the foot, and this is not something that's happened after the Ukraine war. Obviously, Ukraine war made things worse, but this has been happening for decades now. And we've got to blame von der Leyen for that, but also you've got to blame all the European leaders that have been in place as well. They have allowed American companies to take control of European systems, European databases, European social media, European media. They have allowed Americans to come in and completely take over the industry. I mean, I come from a computing background, and I remember back in the day, and when I used to work with databases, there was Oracle coming up, and there was SAP, and British companies were choosing Oracle over SAP. And obviously, SAP is a German company, and Oracle is American. And this was basically happening all over the tech sector. You know, companies in UK were just choosing American tech products and software and hardware. They were buying everything American. They were buying nothing European, and this is why SAP has not been doing very well. There's lots of other European software companies, and they were just being overlooked. And American software companies were taking all over the tech sector. Even now, you see companies running Amazon, AWS, their companies are running Google, companies are running Google Cloud, Oracle Cloud, AWS Cloud. And pretty much most of the software companies that run UK and Europe are American. And if you go to the high street, most of the companies are American. Obviously, you have all the fast food companies and even supermarkets are owned by Walmart. For example, in Britain, Asda used to be owned by Walmart, but I'm not sure who owns it now. But pretty much most of the companies are American or BlackRock owned. And Europeans have allowed that to happen. They've allowed American companies to come in and take full control. And also, Europeans have been investing heavily in America. Britain has been investing heavily in America as well. And and also in terms of finance, they've been kind of linked to the dollar. Like, for example, if you go to the bank and you want to take some money out, if you look at the bank card, it's an American card. I mean, my bank card is Visa, and other bank cards are Visa, Mastercard. So when I take want to take money out or anything like that, Visa, Mastercard are the ones that make the money. World Pay, for example. So all of the financial stuff, goes through SWIFT. It's all kind of controlled by America. They have completely surrendered themselves to the American way, and in terms of finance, in terms of military, everything is NATO. There was a time when Britain, France, Germany, all these companies had an arms department, but what happened is when they joined NATO, they had to buy NATO weapons, because they had to be NATO compliant. As part of being part of NATO, that's the rule. You have to have NATO compliant um, weapons. And guess what? Most of these weapons are American. So you had to buy expensive F-35s, you had to buy HIMARS, expensive, everything you had to buy from America. And and that means there was less money going into the country's, defense and more money going into buying expensive American weapons because of NATO. And this was one way America has basically made Europeans dependent on them using NATO. And this Article 5 thing is a complete sham, by the way. If tomorrow Russia decided to, you know, um, have a war with Balkan states, for example, like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, there is no way they will hit Article 5. Absolutely no way, 100%. There is no way Europe is going to risk a nuclear war over the Balkans, Baltic states. Absolutely never going to happen. So this Article 5 thing, it only works for if a weak country attacks you, then they will enable Article 5. But if a strong country attacks you, like Russia, China, they'll be like, oh, actually, let's not risk nuclear war. Let's not risk nuclear annihilation for just a small country. We'll just, let it pass. This Article 5, is really, if they can, it really means nothing, unless you're a small country and you decided to attack a NATO country, which is never going to happen, by the way. Never. So Article 5 is a sham. So all these European countries signing up to NATO is just, a way for American military industrial complex to make money out of them. And they have. So they have given up their military to American NATO based weapons. They have given up their financial systems to American financial system. They've given up their finance to the dollar. They have given up. They are spending all their money onto American bonds. Propping up the dollar and propping up the American, you know, um, system. They have propped up their own technology sector. It's so bad that Europeans don't have their own social media platform. They don't have their own software platform anymore. They don't have anything. Everything is just Americanized, guys. Everything. And it's a completely sham. It's happened over like 10, 20 years. I mean, there was a time when Europe had its own industry, had its own softwares, had its own, you know, hardware and things like that. It's all gone. It's all gone. So it's happened over, decades. It's not something that's happened overnight. After the Ukraine war, everything accelerated, and you've seen von der Leyen coming up and lying in front of everyone and becoming even more dependent on America by buying American gas and oil. And this thing in Ukraine, guys, it wasn't even the Europeans that pushed for regime change in Ukraine. It was Americans. It was Victoria Nuland who was out there at the Maidan giving away cookies. And famously, she was on a tape, and she said famously, "F the EU." That's what she said. Because somebody was raising questions about this is going to affect Europeans, and Europeans might be dragged into war with Russia, and all these other things that could happen with this regime change they were doing in Ukraine, and that was her response. She said, "F the EU," and stupidly, the EU leaders went along with it. The Europeans they should have had their own backbone, own spine, because what they've done, you know they've also given away their foreign policy as well. So everything America does, Europe basically follows. So if America supports a genocide, Europe will, support a genocide. If America supports a regime change somewhere around the world, Europe will support it. If America wants a war with another country, Europe will support it. So Europe has pretty much given away its sovereignty, its foreign policy, its fine, everything. They've given away everything to the Americans. They have no independent thought anymore. This is why the Europeans have no respect around the world. Nobody respects the Europeans because they know what the Americans say or do, the Europeans will pretty much follow. Europeans, they had a GDP, combined GDP. If you add all the countries, they had a combined GDP, same as America. They should have been a superpower in Europe. They should have had their own minds, their own foreign policy, their own kind of manufacturing, their own software, their own hardware. China knows this. This is why China does everything itself. They do not rely on, you know, other countries' equipment because they know that in eventually, if there's a war or something like that, those equipment will be banned to be sold in China. So China knows this. They have to be self-sufficient, and they've known this for years. Europe has never known this. Europe has always kind of relied on America, and they never thought that America would turn on them like Trump has done now. And it's been a big wake-up call for them, but it's too late, guys. It's too late. They should have done this 20, 30 years ago. They should have had their own independent industry, independent thought, independent foreign policy. And now it's all come to roost. They have been supporting regime change and America taking over countries, invading countries like, Iraq and Afghanistan. And now it's coming home to roost because now America wants to invade Greenland. So what's the Europeans gonna do? Nothing. It's all coming back to haunt them. So I don't know how things can change, really, guys. I think the only way Europe can change is, first of all, they need to get rid of von der Leyen. They need to strike a free trade deal with China. They need to stop this war with Russia, make friends with Russia, give Russia whatever it needs, and they need to basically build the Nord Stream 2 pipeline again and start buying cheap gas from Russia again. And that's it. They need to be independent. They need to kick out all the American tech companies like Oracle, like Google, like X, Meta, everything. They need to kick it out and start building their own. They might hurt for a few years. They're going to be really struggling for a few years, but after a few years, they will things will be better. For example, when Trump placed semiconductor, you know, um, sanctions on China, China did hurt for a few years. Huawei did hurt. They completely tried to destroy Huawei. And now for a few years, Huawei was hurting. They were losing a lot of money. But they worked hard and they became self-sufficient. And now Huawei is stronger than ever. They are much stronger position now than they were, 5, 6, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago they were reliant on Western technology, but not anymore. Now they have their own technology. They've built their own. So Europe will hurt for a number of years, 5, maybe 10 years, but they will come out of it much stronger, like China has. And this is what Europe needs to do. So yeah, that's my thoughts, guys. Let me know if you agree, disagree. So let's go to the next article. So the next article, again, ASML is another example of European, you know, v- European. I'm not going to use the word stupid, but it really, I can't really think of any other words other than stupid, guys, because ASML should have been pride of Europe. And the Americans are pretty much destroying ASML. They have been telling ASML not to sell, chip, machines to China. And ASML is pretty much listening to America. I mean, is ASML an American company or a European company? The Europeans should have stood up and said, no, you cannot tell us what to do. You cannot tell us who we can trade with, who we cannot trade with. And because of the Americans, the ASML is basically forced to selling its most expensive EUV machine to China. I'm not complaining, by the way, because they haven't sold this technology to China. China was forced to make its own, and now China is almost ready to build its own EUV machine, and it should be out for production over either this year or next year. ASML is going to have a huge competition in its hands. They're going to compete with Chinese machines, and Chinese machines are going to be much cheaper and much quicker to make, and it's all ASML's fault. China would have been happy to buy ASML machines, but they were not allowed because of what Trump said, and also Biden as well. And because of that, now China is really hitting them hard with the rare earths as well, because they're putting huge restrictions on ASML, and ASML needs these rare earths to continue making these machines. So they used to have a big, I think ASML had about a year or 2 years supply of rare earths before. Now, China has been tightening their strings, and ASML doesn't have as much supply as they used to. So now they're really struggling to find other sources, and they cannot. And this is all ASML's fault, guys, because at the end of the day, they followed what America wanted. And even though they are an American, they are a European company, why listen to America? Why do that? It just doesn't make any sense. It just shows that Europe has no sovereignty, has no backbone, and will do whatever the Americans tell them to. And that's why Europe is going down. Nobody respects European companies anymore. And ASML is not going to last. Once China comes up with its own EUV machines, ASML is going to be the first company to come bankrupt in Europe, because why would any country buy a machine which is worth, I think one of the machine is worth like 1 billion, because it's so expensive. They have to get parts from every part of the world, and the supply chains are expensive, and they don't make it themselves. They have to, you know, other countries make parts, and these parts, there's about 100,000 parts in these machines, and and because of inflation, it's getting more and more expensive. So the top of the range machine is costing near to 1 billion. Which country is going to pay for that to make chips? Nobody. Only countries that will pay for it is maybe TSMC and maybe Intel and a few other American companies, but that's it. No country is going to afford it. So when China comes up with its own EUV machines, they're going to be at least 1/10 of the price. So, if what they're selling for is 1 billion, China will easily sell it for 100,000. And why would it be so cheap? Because China is for its own supply chain, is building its own supply chain. They don't have to bring in parts from all over the world. They can make it in-house, and making it in China would be much cheaper than building it in America or Western countries, for example. And China has all the, raw materials and rare earths, so it'll be much cheaper to build it in China. Plus, staff is cheaper, rent is cheaper, electricity is cheaper, power is cheaper, everything's cheaper in China. So to build these machines would be probably 1/10, and I'm not exaggerating, guys, and I'm pretty sure they would sell it for 1/10 of the price, and the whole world will just buy it from China. Why waste money buying something, you know, which is 1 billion? You can just buy it from China, which can do the same job. Even if it can't do the same job as the top of the range ASML machines, still countries will still buy it from China, because you don't have to have the top of the range machine for everyday chips. If you want, you don't have to have 3 nanometers, 2 nanometers chips, for everything. You can just have like 14 nanometers, 7 nanometers, and that will do the job. That does a job for most of the stuff around the world, and that's what most countries need. And most countries, not only is the price, but most countries are not even allowed to buy these machines from ASML because of American sanctions and things like that. So China's biggest customers are going to be, you know, countries like Russia, Iran, a lot of global South countries, and who are not allowed to buy these chip making machines. And one of the reasons these countries are not allowed to buy chip making machines is not because of sanctions as well, but also because America doesn't want these countries to become technologically advanced, because this is the last throw of the dice from the Western countries to keep some sort of technology for themselves. But it's too late. Once China comes out with it, you know, these chip making machines will go to every single global South country, like Pakistan, like Indonesia, like Vietnam, Malaysia, and they will start making their own chips, and they won't need to buy expensive chips from TSMC, or they don't need to be under, American kind of a noose around their nets. For example, the Americans use chips for a lot of negotiating, and also they use it for threats as well. They said, okay, look, if you don't do this, we're not gonna sell these chips to you. We're not gonna do this to you. You're not gonna be able to buy these advanced chips, Nvidia chips. So America use these chips as a lot of bargaining and a lot of threatening as well to countries. So they cannot do that anymore once China comes up with its own making machines and its own chips as well. So things are changing around the world, and the Americans are absolutely panicking if China comes up with its own chip companies. But it's all their own fault, guys. This is all Trump's fault. China was happily happy to buy American chips. They were paying up to 600 billion per year for American chips, TSMC chips, and also, Intel chips. And they were happy to buy it because they didn't want to fight America. They didn't want to upset America at the time. But guess what? Trump came in and started putting sanctions on Chinese companies, stopping them buying chip making machines, stopping them buying the most advanced chips. So China was forced to have its own chip making industry. Otherwise, they would have been happy to buy American goods and American chips for the rest of their lives. It wasn't, it was a good partnership China was having with the rest of the world. Anyway, this is all, Trump's fault. And finally, Carney has gone back on his word and he says he's not going to do a free trade deal with China and stuff. So look like, end of the day, you have to understand who Carney is. Carney is former banker, and I think he used to work for Goldman Sachs or one of the big banking companies. So he's a banker. He's very much like Rishi Sunak, end of the day, money talks. And he also listens, because he's a banker, he's a corporate guy. So I think lots of American corporate businesses were kind of speaking to his ear and Trump's threats as well. And he's changed his mind basically. He says there's not going to be any free trade. And also, obviously, he doesn't want this Trump putting 100% tariffs on Canada because that will destroy Canada's industry. But, you can feel sorry for Canada, first of all, because Canada is pretty much right next door to America. They have, I think they're the biggest trading partner with America, and they are pretty much reliant on America. They have not had any other business with any other countries. They don't really have because I think 90% of their business is with America. And again, Canada is pretty much fully Americanized in terms of software, hardware. Every every single business is pretty much American owned. So it's pretty much like Europe and Britain. I mean, America owns most of Canada in terms of business, operating costs, and foreign policy and stuff. So Kanye has got a big job to do if he wants to diversify from America. And obviously, the 100% tariff has scared Canada. Canada is not like China where it can retaliate. And if Canada does retaliate, then it's probably going to be worse off for Canada rather than America. I think America can probably shake it off, but Canada might not be able to. So I think he does not have a choice, to be honest. But I saw a statement from China. I don't know if it's true or not. And China did say that if America puts 100% tariffs on Canada, then China would retaliate on Canada's behalf, and they will put 100% tariffs on American goods. So I don't know if that's true or not. And if that's something China would do, I'm not sure if they would do it. But I think that's the problem really. When you as a country are so dependent on America, America pretty much runs the show, can run they can pretty much threaten you with whatever they can. And this is why it's important as a country not to be completely reliant on America. And this is not just for Canada, this is for every single country around the world, Europe, Africa, Asia. You cannot, rely on America. And you see now countries are understanding this. And now they are trading with other countries with their own currency. They are dumping dollars, they are dumping bonds. And I think slowly countries are diversifying from America, diversifying from their trade, diversifying from their technology, diversifying from their finance. And I think over time, Canada would be able to be in a position to do, trades with the rest of the world. I think right now Canada is in a really tough position. So I don't want to blame Canada or Carney. I think, end of the day, he's looking after his own interests. However, Canadians are actually in a really bad position because, Trump has said many times he wants to take over Canada as a 51st state. And already parts of Canada, like Alberta, for example, wants to separate from Canada and they want to possibly join the United States. So Canada has got huge security issues. And it's not a trade problem, guys. I think it's more of a security problem with Canada. If one day China and Russia form some sort of Asia NATO or a world NATO, their own version of NATO, and they can protect countries like Canada from the United States and, protect countries like Greenland, protect other countries like Venezuela, you know, Iran and stuff like that. If they can form some sort of security architecture, and obviously if Canada wants to join as part of that, then things will change in terms of trade because security is the number one thing, right? So if Canada makes trades with China, then that makes Trump very angry. Puts 100% tariffs on Canada. He pushes for counties like Alberta to be separate, and America will push Canada to become part of the 51st state and stuff like that. And if America does invade Canada, there's no other country right now who would kind of help Canada. I don't think Europe will do anything. Russia alone is not going to do anything. China alone is not going to do anything. But if China and Russia form some sort of security alliance for the world, where it's basically an extension of BRICS, for example. So all the BRICS countries will be joining in. Maybe all the SCO countries will be joining in, and they will form some sort of world NATO alliance. And that will be used to protect countries like Canada and Venezuela and other countries as well, Greenland, for example. Then I think a lot of countries you will see start trading with China and Russia more because a lot of countries trade with America because they are scared, not because they are trading because they are getting good value for money. They are trading because they have got no choice. Because America basically uses, um, mafia style, um, mafia style terms of business. You either trade with us or we will do this to you. We will do regime change. We will invade. We will cause you a lot of problems. That's why, you see a lot of countries are forced to trade with America, and a lot of countries are forced to not to trade with China because this is what America does. They threaten these smaller countries. They say, you trade with us and you cannot trade with China. If you do, then this will happen. And you can see stuff like this is happening all over the world. Like Peru right now is canceling a lot of Chinese contracts. You see obviously Venezuela as well. What's happening with Venezuela? So this is what America does. Is this America's tactics around the world? So I think what China and Russia needs to do, they need to come up with some sort of world alliance that can protect countries like China, like Canada and Venezuela. So they don't do that. They are not. They feel like they are protected from American invasion, American bullying, and then you will see the whole world moving towards a more of a um, multipolar world. Because without the security, the world will still be unipolar. Because America still runs the world military at the moment. They have 800 bases around the world, so they pretty much run the show when it comes to military. And there needs to be, for a world to be multipolar, there needs to be some sort of balance, a military balance, with China and Russia together. And that is the only way you will see countries not going back on their trade agreements and things like that. So I don't want to blame Canada. So as a Canadian, you probably feel like you have no choice but to kind of deal with America and listen to what America says and forced to do what America wants. Otherwise, you are basically in big trouble. But there is no alternative out there. There was nobody else there to protect you. And I think this is why Kanye has felt that he's got no choice but to listen to America at this point. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. And I'll see you in the next video. Also, if you guys do me a favor, I'm going to upload a lot of old videos to my old channel. If you guys remember me, I used to run an old channel called Wolf Warrior channel. So it was my first channel, and what YouTube did was they made it. They stopped monetizing it, and because of my content was too controversial for them. So I'm going to try and monetize that channel all over again. And for me to do that, I'm going to have to upload a lot more videos, and I'm going to have to. For me to get monetized, I have to have 4,000 watch hours. Everyone has to watch up to 4,000 together, obviously. So if you can kind of watch a lot of these older videos, I'm going to upload it to my older channel. I'm also going to be uploading it to a new channel I'm working on in case this one gets banned as well. So at least I have something to fall back on. And so if you guys can watch it, you don't have to listen to it. You can just let it run in the background. It's the watch time that kind of that I need. So that's the kind of favor I'm looking for. So I can start, you know, after I know I've not been doing videos a lot, but I think one of the reasons I stopped making videos because they've been really hard on me. They've been demonetizing me. They've been police knocking on my door. I've tried everything they can to silence me. They've even tried to block my bank account and many other things, guys. They blocked my Google AdSense account and the PayPal account. So they did a lot to kind of silence me. I, I'm going to continue to kind of making these videos. So I need your help, obviously. So we're trying to basically keep on top of it and make sure I have everything everything planned and ready in case, possibly plan for worst case scenario. If they try and ban me again, demonetize me again, at least I have different options available. So anyway, that's all I wanted to ask. Anyway, guys, have a nice weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care for now.